I guess the ultimate is choice for us. And that's part of our definition of what we call sufficient funds. Sufficient funds for us is really getting super clear on these things, being clear, but also knowing what you're not chasing, so that when you see the person driving, flying past you in the Ferrari, you're not going comparing yourself, right, instantly to the next person. You've got your guiding lights. You know what you want.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show for Australians who want to learn how to unlock their full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and to live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life that you really want. Let's get started.
Hi, freedom fighters. Have you ever suffered from insufficient funds? I mean, when was the last time that you rocked up to an ATM to grab some quick cash, only to get hit with the green flashing insufficient funds or transaction decline notice as you look around sheepishly to make sure that no one's watching? Or perhaps you've been caught while grabbing your favourite coffee and you quickly tap your credit card, only to get a transaction decline response as you instantly turn all shades of red with the embarrassment of overdrawing your card or not having enough in your account. Or you've silently cursed and sweared as your direct debit or periodical payment gets dishonoured because you just don't have enough money in your account and you get hit with a dishonour fee just to rub it in. Or maybe you've been in a cold sweat because you know that you don't have enough to cover your upcoming rent or your mortgage and you just don't know where you're going to get the money to cover it. Or worse still, you're hit with an unexpected emergency, like you or your family incurs a costly injury or sickness, or you lose your job or your business doesn't receive a big payment and just don't know how you're going to put food on the table until you get back on track. Now, does any of this ring true or sound familiar? Now, come on, be honest. We've all been there at some point in our life or other and experienced the embarrassment, discomfort and stress that all of this brings. Because insufficient funds is a place that we've all been to at some stage, whether we're prepared to admit it or not. But the scary thing is that if it's left unaddressed and becomes a bad habit, insufficient funds actually has the potential to ruin you. That growing feeling of dread can dampen your spirits, crush your lust for life and smother your chances of achieving all the good things that you were born to achieve. And if left to fester too long, you can see you settling for a paler, lesser life where you end up unhappy and unfulfilled. But there's also times when insufficient funds may not be obvious. You might not be drowning in debt or living hand to mouth from one week to the next, but perhaps you're finding yourself feeling lesser or not on track financially when you compare yourself to your family, friends or work colleagues, and you're overwhelmed by what you can and should be doing about it. Now, if any of this rings true, then you've landed in the right place, because today's guest, James Millard, is going to help you get as far away from insufficient funds as possible so that you never have to return there as you get invested in your unique version of your ideal life. Now, apart from being a self-professed average surfer, which I'm sure we'll touch on, James is known as Australia's most relatable money guy, and as a financial advisor, he helps you make the life-changing shift from insufficient to sufficient funds, which just happens to be his guiding purpose, as well as the name of his business and his new book, which we're going to unpack over the next 2 episodes. So welcome and let's get invested, James.
Wow, Bushy, thank you so much.
Mate, very inspired by your book. I had a really good read, and it's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm one of those rare nerds who really gets off on that sort of a topic. But mate, for those that have either been living under a rock or haven't come across you so far, can you sort of start off with what you do differently and probably more importantly, mate, why you do what you do?
Yeah, thank you. And so look, I'm a money nerd at heart, and financial advice, mortgage broking has been something I've been doing for a while. But really for us, the difference is we lean into the life side of things and we start there. The money for us, for me, really is a facilitator, nothing more.
Yeah, I love that. So the money's the vehicle, not anything else. It's the way of getting to it, how you want to live without being the be-all and the end-all. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, I guess what I'd like to do is get you to take us on a bit of your own journey, both personally, professionally, and what I call passively in terms of the money piece, and give us a bit of a rundown on what you've invested your time, energy, and money in over the years and why, And how has this actually led you to where you are and what you're doing today, mate?
Okay, thank you, mate. And look, I mean, school for me, growing up was in country New South Wales in Grafton, and I had, I guess, a fairly standard upbringing. We were a public school. We were, just the rough and tough boys running around, playing soccer, doing all these things. I went off to uni in Newcastle, and Newcastle at the time was like, wow, this is the capital of the world. It's huge. After uni, to Brisbane for a couple of years, and then to Sydney. And I guess what I devoted my time to, my energy, and through those times of development was very much self-development. It was very heavy on the, what can I learn? How do I do this? And what else can I add to my arsenal, so to speak? And thinking about, well, how do I improve myself? Because that's all I had. I finished uni. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. To be honest, after I finished high school, I did science in first year uni. That's how clear it was at the time. I switched into finance and commerce after that, and started dabbling in the financial planning side of things and other bits and pieces. My first job was in lending, completely out of where I am now, but in a very big corporate world. And one thing I learned very quickly was that was not really the place for me. I then joined a much, much smaller, very small business, but a boutique-y kind of business that was very, very entrepreneurially driven. And I think a few seeds were planted at that point, and it was more of a sink or swim scenario as I learned the ropes through the financial planning world. And yeah, we ended up in Sydney, spent a decade and a bit there, and now back in Newcastle. And so devoted time, a lot of that time, to learning and growing myself. And look, I guess one of the things, I'm not sure what it was really, but for me, there was always if I'm not sure what to do, I'll always just try to lean in and push myself a little bit. I think there's a little bit of I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and I'm okay being out of my comfort zone. And sometimes that's all I know. And so naturally, I think it's not something that I've, I was born with it, I think, but I lean into that aspect of, okay, well, I don't know that, I'm going to give it a crack. I'll force myself to do it. I'll be incredibly nervous the first time around, whatever it is. And in many cases, that's paid off. And so that was a driver behind maybe some really good career growth and that side of things as well.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it sounds like from a young age, you had that personal development drive, which is pretty rare, mate, because at young age, most people focuses on girls, cars, and good times. Where do you think that sort of drive to, one, challenge yourself, as you mentioned, and put yourself out of your comfort zone and focus on that personal development came from? Because, as I say, it is a bit of a rarity.
Look, I think initially my parents, and even my grandma, my nana, who lived in Yamba, she was very much a bit of a go-getter herself. My parents, and I think, look, I had an upbringing where I was actually born in the UK, and I shook the accent fairly early on. We moved when I was 3, but we landed in that kind of the sleepy village of Angari up on the north coast, the surfing mecca. And I think from having a global family, we also, it's dad had brothers who spread out across the world. Travel was very much inbuilt for us. And I guess, and I don't remember exactly why, but I used to tell my nana, I'm going to be the CEO one day. I didn't know what that meant. But I think there was something in there that I can't really put a finger on, but it was something there that I guess it was always about something more.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I know from Google stalking you that you're an avid surfer. And if you're surfing regular, if you're doing it just about every day, well, you're taking a risk every day as you jump on that board and scream down the face. And there's a lot of people who talk about surfing. I haven't surfed for years, mate. And the last time I did so badly because I was so unfit that I had to get dragged in by a jet ski. But because I was caught in a rip. But there is a psyche that goes with surfing that is about continuously challenging yourself. So that may well have reinforced your sort of inbuilt approach to life, I guess, in that respect. So I'd love for you to, you've had a pretty interesting and varied experience across the years. Can you sort of share with us what challenging event in your life has brought about your greatest learnings and your best changes over the time so far?
Yeah, I mean, look, think about challenging events in more recent times. My son is now 5, but when he was brought into the world, our second child, we were, I think, about 7 months pregnant when my wife and I, probably need to give the audience a bit of a trigger warning around this just in case, but my wife had a major hemorrhage and was in the office at the time. It was Friday afternoon. Everyone was about to bail and get out of there. She thought her waters had broke. Anyway, long story short, she's through emergency. They call her a code blue, and it was very touch and go for a bit there. And so this was incidentally just into the new financial year where I'd made the call to leave a business and wrap up the business that I'd started 2 years before with 2 others and start with Tash and myself, my wife, Sufficient Funds. And so anyway, everything was okay. Almost had to deliver him, didn't in the end, managed to stick it out for another month or so. Tash spent the entire month in hospital, in and out a little bit, but then most of it in, just on monitoring, essentially. And he ended up being born 5.5 weeks early. So still preemie and still with a few initial challenges, but there's a few other bits and pieces around that story. But in the end, I mean, by the time he was born, we're 11 days in to launching Sufficient Funds. And the phone wasn't ringing, of course. But we had to, I'd brought a bunch of clients with me and I just had to life was on hold, right? So life was completely on hold. We were sitting in special care for a few weeks after he was born. So poor Tash spent, after all that trauma, had spent almost 2 months in hospital, in and out, with before and then afterwards. And we sat in there. I'd bring the laptop in and do what I could. I'd go outside and skate around the car park just to get some fresh air. My daughter was 18 months at the time, so I was kind of in and out, bringing her in and out from daycare and everything else. But when we think about lessons, one thing that we realized then, it was the first time we'd really been slapped in the face properly by life, I think. And for me, it was perspective. All of a sudden, you just have to stop. You don't have a choice. There's no other option but to drop absolutely everything and focus. And interestingly enough, out of that, I guess you're then thinking, well, why can't I take that attitude when I need it in other areas? And so, yeah, a lot came out of that. And thankfully, everyone survived. He's thriving. He's playing soccer. He's doing all sorts of good stuff now. And we got through it.
Yeah, pretty tough time. You've got the personal issues. You're starting a business, and that's stressful enough as it is at the best of times. And from what I can gather, yourself and Tash are intimately involved in the business.
Yeah.
So pretty much having you both out of action right from the get-go would have been fun and games. And there's probably the financial pressure hanging in the back of your head as well as you try to deal with all of that and bed the family down. So what was it you think that allowed you to work through that and overcome it? Was it you just had no choice, or there's obviously something there you go, okay, well, we're going to make this happen?
No choice is number one, absolutely. And then secondly, we were incredibly planned and thought out around the starting of the business. And we talk about the adrenaline side of things. I probably left out that we had 2 years before dived into probably the mortgage at the level that we'd stretched ourselves beyond what we maybe should have. But again, we can make these decisions when we're fully comfortable about our situation. And thankfully, we had a really solid emergency fund. We'd saved up, we'd sold our original home to buy the next one, kept a bit of cash aside. And it was very touch and go. That emergency fund ran fairly dry in the end. But yes, we're very thankful for financial, but also no option. Just get it done.
But here's the key. You had that emergency fund or rainy day reserve that I often referred to it as, which would have actually made that decision a bit easier. Because most people don't have it. And we'll talk more about this in the second episode when we deep dive on the book. But just having that reserve in play to even give you the breathing space to go, right, well, I can put the time into making this happen. I don't have a choice, but at least I'm not trying to survive on 2-minute noodles and toast while we try and get through this whole family challenge. Looking back on it, by having the nous to actually put that in play and have that breathing space, I don't know about you. I've been through a similar exercise when I went through my marriage went belly up years ago, and Mum got stage 4 cancer, and I had to take 12 months out and just I guess I won't have to happen, but I had the freedom of doing that because my income needs were being covered by the reserve that we had in place. So it took a layer of pressure away from because that financial exercise can often tip someone over the line. Is that the emergency fund that you developed? Was that just because you're so immersed in the financial planning exercise it almost is a habit that you don't need to think about, or is that a conscious decision that you and Tash made sometime before?
Very conscious and driven by probably the background, I would say, in the money world, but very much about saying, look, if we need a year or two of income, what does this look like? We've got a young family, we've got a big mortgage. Don't dump it all in there and lock it away, because that was our lifeline, really. And I mean, it's an interesting concept, the emergency fund or the rainy day fund, right? Because people say you've got to do it, and a lot of people hear this, and we can get into the detail, but it's another thing of actually using it, and how do you bounce back after you've gone through that section, that process. We've got a section in the book called Defend. It's one of those big areas. It's like, okay, it's hit the fan, you've dealt with it, but what next?
Yeah. No, I love that, and we will dive in and unpack that so that people have got some real takeaways on what an emergency fund really means, because it's a term that gets bandied around a lot, but when comes to the crunch, very few people have one, or if they do have one, it's often not enough to touch the sides of what their needs are going to be when the poo does hit the fan. So, exactly. Now I love that. So I just want to circle back around this, because I guess what's emerging out of this, James, is that everything we do is generally driven by our upbringing and the core values and beliefs that come out of that. What are your core values and beliefs, and how do you think they've influenced your life today and ongoing?
So you've got to be, I mean, for me, it's all about getting super clear on what you want to achieve. And so from a values perspective, it's just understanding at the core, what are your intentions, and making sure you make a plan around that. So it's not sitting on your butt doing nothing. And I mean, I guess, what's really important to me, it's family big time, and that extends to the extended family, of course, but trying to get time and spend it with the kids, that type of thing is crucial for me, and fun, and both of those are probably intertwined in one way or another. Sometimes it's not that we're doing everything together, but yeah, I mean, I know as soon as I have too long out of the water, the surfboard's dried up in the garage, those types of things, you suddenly realize all the mountain bike's tires have gone flat and you need a service because you didn't ride it more regularly, that type of thing. And it happens is something that's so critical. So family and fun for me they're my drivers.
Yeah. I love that. On the flip side of that, then, you've gone through a lot. What do you still struggle with, James?
I still struggle with saying no. And that comes with the I guess there's a bit of creative in me, I think, and everything's quite shiny, and I need to deal with the shiny object syndrome, and that crosses everything, right? I've been nicknamed a couple of times by people very close to me, the name Obsesso. So once I get a good idea in my head, it doesn't disappear until we've given it a good nudge. So the saying no and just being and aligning. Look, I've got very good at this now. I'm much better than I was, but just keep that frame of what are we working towards? What's the most important thing, and align those decisions with that. And there's some good financial planning lessons in that as well.
100%, and a lot of it's ringing true with me. If it wasn't for my partner Sonia, I have a habit of burying myself ridiculously in stuff and just can't let it go. But I've got that voice of truth sitting beside me going, you're doing it again. And she jumps in and creates the barriers that I should be putting there in front of me most of the time. Anyway, I'm not sure it's the same with Tash, but...
big time, yeah. And look, I mean, Tash, probably the most influential person in my life right now, of course, and like just true grit and determination. That story I just mentioned about going through the birth of Eden, and I mean, she's got some other health stuff going on, and there's a whole bunch of things there that, I mean, the constant battles there are real, but for us, I mean, seeing her strength through these types of things is incredible. And just to call that out, that's endometriosis. So it's something that maybe, if you've got a bunch of listeners, it's a very, very common thing that people may be dealing with. And so, financial planning around all of that is something that's become a big part of how we approach things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Tash's greatest strength's probably keeping me sane on that roller coaster of business and life. We're fully in this in every way. We're partners in this. So yeah, incredible. And then, I mean, when you talk about values, my parents, I mean, they were great savers, really, really good savers, borderline frugal. And, now I'm helping them kind of flex the spending muscles a bit more now that the means are certainly there and that side of things. But they also, I mean, they've got really good, strong Christian values. And whilst I'm not, practicing Christianity necessarily from a day-to-day perspective, I mean, certainly that ability to kind of look after people and care about people, I think is deep inside me, which, I mean, everyone says that. I guess I feel it from that perspective. It's a good thing to reflect on, and you've forced me to do this with these questions, so I love it.
No, it's good. It's really, the more I listen to you, the more we've had similar experiences, because again, my mother was a Christian rock in our family, and she's the most giving person I've ever met. And almost by osmosis, it becomes a part of how you see the world, because that's what you grew up with for the first 20 odd years of your life. So that becomes an important part of the exercise, and that ability to give and to help others. I don't know about you, but there's nothing more fulfilling for me, mate, to see the lights go on when someone's been struggling to try and get someone, suddenly it's, oh, wow, okay, now I'm excited and now I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah.
That's the price tag on that. It's gold.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're lucky we get to see that when we're delivering plans and we're delivering results financially for people, and you can show them it's not the money, it's the life. Look what you can do now. And all of a sudden, the value of that becomes very real.
Yeah, I love that. But you touched on money and touched on the miserly McScrooge approach of your folks. Let's talk to us a bit more about, what actually money means to you and what your money story is, because that will pretty much set the tone, I'm pretty sure, for a lot of the stuff that you're now doing.
Yeah, so I mean, really it is about that focus on it being the facilitator, not the driver. So if you lead with, what am I trying to achieve? What do I care about? What do I not care about? Rule out everything else and focus on those things that you're real, like, what are my intentions? What do I really want to achieve here? Then you can start to prioritize, you can map it out, and you can then align money. So money for me, it facilitates. If you get that part right, and then you're clear on the life you want to live, then you can make it happen.
Yeah, I love it. It's the fuel that's it's not the destination, it's not the vehicle, it's the fuel that can enable things to happen. But the biggest step, and I'm sure you see this as well, because it's certainly a big part of what we do when we're helping people. When you ask people a question around what's your ideal life look like, most people look at you like two heads and go, what do you mean? What's that got to do with anything? Very rare that people spend any time getting crystal clear around what that means. But if they actually did take the time, not only do they get motivated and excited about it, but then it's something that they're prepared to climb over broken glass and rocks to get there if the inspiration is strong enough. So I love that. Sort of moving on from there, given that you're active in this space, and that there's different perceptions of financial planners, and sadly the industry's had an interesting reputation at times.
Yeah.
Given that context, and having read and looked at a bit of the stuff that you do, sort of quite unique in the space, What's one thing about your money investment approach that you think pretty much no one in your industry agrees with? Is there anything there you can share with us?
Yeah, look, I think for us, it's very much about starting with, yeah, absolutely, Bushy. I think for us, it's the fact that we don't place all the value in investment returns. And so from a financial advisor, a lot of people come at it from this idea of what you call wealth management. It's just about making more than the market's going to make. And we're going to beat the market. That's our value. And what happens when COVID hits? What happens when the GFC happens? The market tanks and all of a sudden you're the bad guy. Well, that doesn't help because you're not actually helping people make decisions. And so for us, behavior trumps investment returns every day of the week. If you can keep a bit more of what you're earning, if you're clear on what you want to achieve, and then you've got to align what you've got left over with those, and make big financial decisions based on that guiding light of the things you actually care about, well then getting that right makes so much more difference than whether you get 7, 8, 9% per annum return.
Love that. That's the real guiding light as far as that goes. Let's circle back to your personal investment journey, if we can, and break it down for us a little bit in terms of, why did you decide to invest in the first place, and what triggered your interest, and then what did you end up investing in, and how has that sort of changed and moved over time?
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think probably similarly to you, I heard you mention this on another episode about the view of investment being so broad, and it's not necessarily just the financial instruments you're using to get you there. But when we think about money and investment, for me, I was lucky. I had a grandfather who set up a bit of a managed fund for me that Dad then passed through at a time when it was sort of buying the first car and doing a few things. So I had a chance to kind of watch that up and down over time and learn a bit about that behind the scenes. And it wasn't a huge amount, but it was a really good kind of step into a bit of a house deposit. And so that's what it ended up being. It was our first apartment, was some part of that. We'd saved everything else. So our first big investment, I guess, was the home outside of that. And we've been very lucky that home values for us and timing in terms of sales and when we upgraded, it's been incredible. We've had 3, so 1, 2, 3 homes, so to speak, and we've sold each one as we've moved on. Yeah. And that alone has probably been the 3 best investment decisions we've made. When you think about that, that was actually a very long time ago when I was starting the corporate world, a CEO that we had gave me that advice. And I'm not saying you need to listen to this as gospel, because the world's very different now if you're a first home buyer. So that's critical. But the advice I was given was you'll never make more money than you will with the home you live in.
Yeah.
And that has played out pretty well for us. We've been really lucky there. Yeah. Outside of that, we dabbled fairly unsuccessfully in thinking about doing a bit of a property development. Bought a block with an old shack, we're planning to develop it. It was 2 hours north of Sydney where we're living at the time in the Hunter Valley. And look, thankfully, I mean, we never got off our butts to actually make it work. And had we done that, we may have made a really, really good return. But a lesson out of that, don't try property development from a distance when you're very much fairly green in that space. Your mate might be doing it, but he's a surveyor and he knows exactly what he's doing, and that's very different. So we're lucky we got to flip that in the end and made a bit of money out of it. Didn't lose anything, but good lessons out of that one.
Yeah, it did well to do that. I as an architect, you'd think I would know a bit about property, but my first venture into property, being young and gung-ho and full of ego and testosterone, did a 1 into 4 in Alice Springs, would you believe, and completely missed the market by a mile because we're going to design the Taj Mahal that everyone was going to fall over themselves to pay extra for. Didn't understand how it worked at all. Lost money. I was involved with 3 other people, and one got divorced. The biggest mistake to make from the start, but the biggest learnings came out of that about how I would be doing it differently from there, mate. So
Yeah,
completely get what you're sharing there. If you look at over the journey then so far, you mentioned the three houses have been probably your best investment. What apart from that one that you just mentioned about the Hunter Valley development, what's been your worst, do you think?
Actually, that's probably it, to be honest. I mean, we've been actively involved in the share market and a little bit in the crypto space, playing around there with completely no idea what I'm doing, to be honest. And yes, I know I'm the financial advisor, and I actually don't see this as too wild, because we very, very importantly, if you're going to have a dabble in those types of things and it's not your space, do it with a very small proportion of what you have. And really that's 2, 3, 4% perhaps of what you have available to invest, and make sure that that is money that you're very happy if it turns to zero. So, and we there's been some fun in and around that one, but and we've got what you call investment bonds. We've got some investment bonds that we use for our kids. We're saving in a very tax effective environment for their futures. And what that looks like, we're not sure yet, but we're, putting something away so there's something outside of mum and dad's world that might be there for them, not that we're telling them about that at this point in time.
Keeping that under a bushel, like I can say. Yeah, something I wouldn't mind you sharing, because there's a lot of talk about investment strategy, as you would know, James. But one thing that I know from my personal journey is that strategy needs to actually change and transition as your portfolio and as your knowledge actually evolves as well, because the more you understand, the more comfortable you are, the more you're able to take educated risks and come out on top. But can you share with us what your initial investment strategy was and how that's actually evolved over time and why in your own personal situation?
Yeah, look, initially it was very much, it was probably more driven by there's some money to make there, and we'll run and chase it. And that was the property option. That was the, hey, we've got a bit of equity, we can borrow some money, it's not going to cost us anything, this is easy. Earning good money in the corporate world. We were both on full-time salaries and climbing the ladder. And so that foray into what was at the time a $250,000 property purchase was very easy to make, right? Because it was going to pay for itself. And then those types of things, I mean, I think the deposit on that was $16,000. Now really showing my age. But strategically, I think it's developed over time. And just as we do with clients, we're very much living and breathing this idea of saying, well, what's this for? You've got to, you shouldn't hold an investment if there's no purpose for it. And it's really clear. And that might be a long-term financial freedom. It might be the early retirement bucket, so to speak, or it might be that it's going into super because you're going to work through till you're 60 plus and you don't need anything between now and then. So for us personally, we are dropping money into super. We're consistently investing in the share market. We're considering property options if they come up, but not something we're chasing right now just for where we're at personally. Yeah. And we're also pumping that mortgage because that's it's still up there as well. Yeah,
I love it. And there's a multi-pronged approach. Again, you mentioned earlier, diversifying so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. And if you're going to throw some risk money on the table, make sure it's only a very small portion of what you're happy to lose and walk away with. Some pretty key lessons there. Let's jump into your ideal lifestyle, because I'm a big proponent of living by design, not by default, because way too many Aussies use the excuse of being busy to allow life to happen to them rather than making life happen. What does your life vision and ideal lifestyle look like, James?
Well, it started with complete freedom of location. And I think pre-kids, the dream was always, look, we've been traveling. We've traveled a lot and we've been very lucky to be able to do that. And, there's a lot of thought around, well, we could just drop we could go anywhere and do this. And we can. And we built a virtual team, and we've built, I guess, a life around us where we can be flexible there in terms of that. What that looks like in practice is something we actually haven't actioned. We're still having holidays in the school holidays, and we're doing these things at the moment because that just works for us.
Yeah.
But I guess the ultimate is choice for us. And that's part of our definition of what we call sufficient funds. Sufficient funds for us is really getting super clear on these things, being clear, but also knowing what you're not chasing, so that when you see the person driving, flying past you in the Ferrari, you're not going comparing yourself, right, instantly to the next person. You've got your guiding lights, you know what you want. And when you get that part right, so for us, it's very much about sticking with that idea. Okay, we know what we want to achieve. And that is freedom of location. It is living in a good spot near the beach. That's critical. The coastal life for us is something we'll never, when we were in Brisbane, that was far enough from the coast. Brisbane's an amazing city, but an hour to the beach was too much.
Yeah. Well, just about everything you're sharing, I'm nodding in massive agreement, because you set yourself up very similarly to the way we have. And when someone asks Sonia and I, where do you live? Our response is anywhere, because we actually, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've just been taste testing different destinations and spots we think we might want to be, but until you've actually on the ground and experiencing and rubbing it with the locals, you don't really know. It can look good on the internet, but until you get down and dirty, you don't really have a feel for what it looks like.
Yeah, and that's actually...
Yeah, go on. Sorry, James.
Yeah. Sorry, Bushy. I was just going to say that's actually really, really good advice for anyone who's looking at relocating to another city. Is rent, just rent for a few months and check it out, or Airbnb at least, because you never really know until you get there. And then once you are, it doesn't take long for you to start living like a local, right?
Exactly. And you get a feel for the culture because it's not just the physical nature of the place, it's what's the culture of a town, and they all differ. It does depend on who you rub shoulders with, obviously, and how you're living in the interim, but a big part of that. But again, circling back, the intent from the get-go is there. That's what I'm hearing you sharing with us. Yourself and Tash were very clear that you want to be able to work from anywhere and do anything and have travel as a big part of the mix. Well, that dictates where you live, how you live, dictates how you set the business up. You've really created a template and a framework that everything else slots into, because you started with the end in mind. And there's one thing I want to encourage anyone who tunes into this or listens to you on other formats is take some time to do it. Take some time out. Sonia and I sit down once a year and revisit where we're at, what's changed. Do we need to change the exercise a little bit? What's important to us now? What's not important to us now? What's our perfect day, week, month, year look like? Because once you got some clarity around that, it's really easy to monetize that and work out, well, that's how much this lifestyle costs. Therefore, this is a nest egg that we need to be building that's going to generate that income and fund that lifestyle. It's not rocket science. It's actually pretty easy, but I just see very few people doing it. What's your experience on that, mate?
Yeah, exactly the same. And I think for us, we do. We had for a number of years, we had this old ratty piece of cardboard where we'd started it with all our list. And again, it was an early in the new year as we could handle it, sit down and just wipe the slate clean. Bring out last year's list though, have a look at it, tick it all off. What did we win? Where are our lessons? And, did we have any losses there, so to speak? And then set it again. And yeah, we were scribbling and carry and just stuff it in the cupboard and bring it out every time we needed some motivation. But yeah, I think you're right. Intention is, it has to be there. And it's a pretty popular Instagrammable saying, really. It's just that intent is so critical. And from there, though, action is the next step, right? You can be excited and get lost in your dreams. And if you sit there all day, think about how awesome life's going to be, but don't do anything about it, that's not going to help you much either.
Spot on. And you're right. And, what we think about is what we bring about. But if you don't actually put some action into it and it just remains a dream, then it's never going to become reality. So I love you sharing that. You've had a pretty interesting and varied exercise so far. If we sort of circle back and you think about the journey that you've enjoyed, if you're starting out again, what, if anything, would you invest in differently, do you think?
I think I'd be probably a little bit, if I was starting again, to be honest, I actually think, and hindsight's helpful with this, is I'd probably even take more risk. I would have loaded up on a lot more property. I would have dumped a heap more of our spare cash out of the bank into other types of investments like shares, Oh, look, hindsight, everyone, you can talk about that all day. What would I do differently in the business? Much, much more clear around client experience from day one. I started a business with 2 others from day one, and we all wanted to do different things. And the naivety in my mind was, and probably just stupidly overconfident at the time, was like, we're rolling out of this. We'll be fine. There's plenty of money in the bank. Everything will be fine. We'll bring it together. And, we knew what we knew. We could see what had worked from the place we were all leaving. But putting that into practice in small business was just a complete slap in the face. So, yeah, I mean, probably a little bit more carefully planned and really designing a client experience, which, I mean, for us, it has to start with, and this goes for anything you're trying to do in life, right? Set the goal, make sure you know exactly why you're doing it, come back to that, and probably just having the nous and the maybe the foresight to think, am I joining with the right people? Are we doing the right things? Does it link back to all of that or not? But again, the best lessons come out of that, and my business partners are still really good mates from those years. And so, yeah, no issues, lots of lessons, and move on.
Again, I'm nodding my head as you talk about that, because before we started our know-how business, I was in business with 2 other guys, and we were lucky. I've been burnt in business many years ago, James, so determined not to fall into the same traps. We sat down and had a prenup and a love-in before we even started the business, and asked all the hard questions and looked at all the scenarios. And when it got to the stage where we inevitably decided we were going to go our separate ways, we just pulled the agreement off the shelf, rubbed off the dust, pulled the trigger, and just like yourself, we're still good mates. It's been a really good transition compared to a prior experience in my early stages of my career where I didn't do any of that and got taken to the cleaners actually financially, and took me a long time to lick the wounds and recover from that exercise. So spot on, mate. Having the foresight, and again, it comes back to that intent that you spoke about, is getting really clear on what are you trying to achieve and what do we need to be doing from the outset. Yes, it can be modified, but have a real clear vision on what you're trying to achieve, and that'll pretty much shape everything else. So before I jump into the first of the ambush rounds where I give you the blindfold and a cigarette and ask you the fast 4, is there anything that we haven't touched on in terms of your personal journey, either personally, professionally, or in passive investment-wise, that you want to share with us?
Oh, look, I think the only other thing I would say is lean into professional help, and whether that's in your, in your personal life, thinking about your career, thinking about your money, like we're talking about. For us, we've, finally in the last couple of years engaged a business coach. It's been incredible just to help us kind of see what we're not seeing, and, don't get too big and miss something and then it completely falls apart. So yeah, I mean, I think embrace the value of a coach and an advisor in whatever space that means, makes the most difference for you.
Beautifully said. You just don't know what you don't know until someone else who's completely unrelated and not emotionally invested can step in and ask a question or make an observation that you just haven't even seen. So awesome advice, and that goes with anything you're doing, I think, in that context. Surround yourself with someone who's done it, but also good at communicating it is also important. So let's jump into the ambush round then, James. And the first of those is, what superpower do you wish that you had and why?
Okay, so I honestly, to be honest, I wish I was surfing more, and that'd be a good start. But the superpower that comes with that is lung capacity. As soon as I spend a bit too much time out of the water, I find like my fitness disappears. And if nothing else, the ability to breathe underwater for a little bit longer gives you all the confidence in the world, because you can fall over 100 times, fall off 100 times, but as long as you can hold your breath, everything will be all right.
Bit like that emergency fund that you touched on before, mate. If it's there, then you don't have to worry too much. Switching gears a bit, if you could have a coffee with anyone, and that's either alive or dead or an historical figure, who would you choose and why?
I'd have to say Tim Ferriss. I've listened to Tim and the author of the 4-Hour Workweek many, many, many times. I've watched his random show. That book was pretty pivotal for for me when I first read it way back in 2007, I think it might have been. And, you know, it's driven a lot of how we've built a few things today. So yeah, Coffee with Tim would be a lot of fun, no doubt.
100%. It's funny you mentioned that, because I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for that book. That completely broke the shackles for me. It's like, okay, I get it. That's what I've been looking for. That's a way of actually setting up my life so that life's primary and work surrounds it rather than the other way around. So, and if anyone listening in or watching hasn't read that book, yes, it's old now, but the framework and the approach is still as relevant, and probably more relevant now than it was then, actually.
More doable, probably.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is, definitely. So make sure you go out and have a read of that, and have a listen to Tim Ferriss's podcasts. They're always really, I get a lot out of them. I love them, actually. Has some awesome guests. Next one, mate, if you could wave a magic wand and change anything, what would you change and why?
Oh, look, this is a little bit selfish, but if people could go forward and see the value of financial advice before they have to pay for it, that would change everything for us. We know when people come through the back of it, and then they've maybe had a couple of years of annual reviews and being on call and all of that, they can look at it and say, oh my gosh, why did I ever question it? But if we could just somehow, and look, maybe there's some good marketing lessons in this, but yeah, just really showing people how this big scary world of financial advice isn't that bad is a good one.
Love it. I just triggered a thought, because it's probably a conundrum that you come across all the time as well. But delayed gratification seems to be something that very few people can get their head around, let alone take the initiative on, particularly given we live in an instant everything world these days. What's your thoughts around that, and what's your thoughts on how we can start to get people like financial planning, because that's an investment in the future. It's you're investing in your future self. What's your thoughts on how we can inspire everyday Aussies to see the advantages and benefits of delayed gratification, James?
Look, I think for us, we're working with people mostly under 50, and that segment, I mean, we're all going through it. I'm in it now, and it's the toughest. I mean, everyone says it's the toughest time of life. There's so many moving pieces, and one thing that is helpful at that point, but really for anyone, and financial advisors, I mean, number one, we all need to be way better at marketing ourselves than we are. And that's really critical. It's not anyone's fault that they're not engaging. It's our problem, and we need to fix it. But with that, really, really quick wins, because then it's not just about the 10 years down the track scenario. So when you're engaging an advisor, and that's your challenge to them needs to be, what does this look like in 6 months? How am I going to feel when this is all put in place? What can you solve for me right now? Because if you can see, I mean, when you're working with a lot of millennials, for us, they don't hand over the money unless they can really, really clearly. I mean, the pressure for us to articulate the value. I've never been paid by a client at that age who just thought, oh yeah, that sounds all right, we'll give it a go. You've really got to show them.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good discipline, actually, because it would force you to have to get really crystal clear on conveying that value and getting those early heroin hits. Really important to get the trust to then continue. So I love that. Last one in the round, mate. If I gave you $50 million in cold hard cash right here, right now, what would you do with it and why?
We would go absolutely bananas on a recruitment drive, to be honest. In the business, we're so excited about how we're approaching things at the moment, and I mean, I think there'd be a heavy investment in AI and the people that actually know what they're talking about, not me just playing around and guessing, and then enough people to bring it all together. And I mean, getting really nerdy, I'd set up a private ancillary trust before I started giving any more away. For us. And for me, I mean, we know our numbers, and we're really clear on what beyond sufficient looks like. And for us, it's sufficient funds. That's great. Everything's flowing. But what does that beyond number look like, and how much do we need for that? Now, after that, there's going to be money left over. I do not need 50 million personally. I can tell you that right now. I don't care for the toys as much. I mean, I would enjoy one or two, no doubt. But the travel experiences, all of that, we'll do a lot of that, no doubt. But really having a look at that and going, okay, well, if we're going to give it away, a PAT, private ancillary trust, or private ancillary fund, is a really tax-effective way to be the philanthropist.
Yeah, I love that. If you look at the Microsoft founder, he's done exactly that and does extremely well, and it becomes intergenerational because it's self-sustaining, given the growth and size of it and the ability to make positive impact in the world. So, look, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share the ins and outs of your pretty much unconventional journey in your space, James. But before we close, if anyone would like to explore this inspiration and information further with other like-minded investors in a very safe, relaxed and no-pressure environment, make sure you join us on Facebook at the Property Hub Collective by clicking the link in the show notes. And we look forward to connecting with you and continuing the conversation there. Or if you'd like a deeper dive to unpack your personal money and investment needs and options, along with any other issues that might be holding you back, feel free to book in with me personally for a personal solutions sessions by just jumping on knowhowproperty.com.au, hit the purple book appointment button on the homepage, and then select the personal solutions session option. Just click the link in the show notes and we'll spend a full hour together exploring how you can make it happen for you. We now look forward to continuing our engaging chat with James in next week's episode, where we're going to unpack his recently released book, Insufficient Funds, strange enough, that helps you to make the right money decisions to bring your big plans to life. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to getting invested again then, James.
Thank you. Thanks,
Stay
Bushy.
tuned for part 2 of this interview next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. Make sure you subscribe to Property Hub for free. Get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's top online property show for red-hot property investing news and insights direct from industry leaders and influencers. And finally, I'll see you next time.